Welcome to Between Two Chairs, Demystifying Commercial Real Estate, the podcast that brings you the latest insights and trends on the South Florida commercial real estate market, with your hosts, Fernando Arencibia Jr. and Jennifer Wollmann. In each episode, we dive into the world of commercial real estate and break down complex concepts to make them accessible for everyone. Whether you're a real estate professional, a curious investor, or just interested in the South Florida market in general, Between Two Chairs is the podcast for you. So pull up a chair and join us.
Welcome, everybody, to another episode of Between Two Chairs. We have a very dynamic and amazing guest, and I can't wait to get into it. But once again, my name is Fernando Arencibia, and with me, as always, is the infinitely curious Jennifer Wollmann. Jennifer, say hello.
Hello.
So let me just tell you, guys that are listening, we have with us today one of the most amazing human beings in commercial real estate in South Florida. And I'll say that first because I have a very long bio that, even though we've shortened it, it's incredibly impressive. But what's most impressive is this is a real human being. This is a person that knows how to interact with each other. He knows how to take care of people. He's always available. And, it really is an honor to know you, Tony. So I want to introduce Antonio Tony Puente. He is a broker associate and senior advisor at Fairchild Partners. He's been there since 2006, over 35 years of real estate experience, after spending his first 8 years as vice president of CRE. He has represented both landlords and commercial tenants in the leasing, sales, and acquisition and the disposition of both office, industrial, retail properties in over 1,800 transactions. So
That's
there's
impressive.
a lot of experience here. In 2015, Tony was inducted into the Miami-Dade College Alumni Hall of Fame for outstanding contributions in the field of real estate, which he continues to do. Past member of FIU's Real Estate Alumni Affinity Council. He's been a frequent guest speaker for every major organization in South Florida. Tony holds a BA in finance from Florida International University, and he's a graduate of Belen Jesuit Preparatory High School in Miami. His clients are well-known institutional entrepreneurial owners of South Florida office industrial properties, including the very specific asset class, which we're going to discuss today, studios. He has tenant reps, Spanish Broadcasting, Mega TV, Somos TV, and he currently has a 70,000 square foot TV radio broadcasting facility for sale in the Airport West area of Miami, which we can't wait to delve into. Tony, say hello.
Hello, everybody. Beautiful Thursday morning in sunny Miami, Florida. How are you guys doing?
Right. Excellent.
Great. So do you want to give us, I know that was a very, that's the very formal background. You want to tell us a little bit about, growing up in Miami?
So, yeah, sure. I give a lot of my success and a lot of kind of rationale to where I'm at in my life now, really to being, born and raised in Miami and really seeing this area in this city, develop from what it was, when I was in high school, which I went to a local high school, as was mentioned, Belen, went to a local college, FIU, and really got my real estate license at a very young age of 19, did a couple years of residential, and then immediately dove into the commercial world. Received a tremendous opportunity from a national developer out of New York that had a pretty big presence in Miami, Tishman Speyer, and you kind of got in the door on the research level, interacted with their brokers, and really my career, took off from that. But really seeing Miami, from my youth and through my college days and then into early on in my career, you're really able to, tell individuals that you run into on a day-to-day basis and clients, really where we've come from and how we've gotten there. And I'm looking forward to talking a little bit about that.
Tell me a little bit how you did the switch from residential to commercial. How was it? Somebody you knew who gave you that intro, or just opportunity knocked and you opened the door? Tell us a little bit about that.
So the first thing is I knew early on in my life that I know what I didn't want to do. I didn't want to work for corporate America. It just wasn't something that attracted me in my young age. And I knew I wanted to be entrepreneurial. And going to FIU, really opened my eyes to those opportunities. And obviously, when you make when you have that mindset, and you don't want the standard kind of mid management job and so forth. There's certain, you have to either be in a sales position, you can go sell cars, you can be a mortgage broker, you can be an insurance agent, or you can be a real estate broker and so forth. So I did have a family member in the real estate industry, and I was exposed to it a little bit at a young age. And so once I kind of said real estate was for me, I figured out early on, after I did a little bit of residential, that the emotional side of the residential side was a little bit too much for me to handle. Touring around looking at houses and then having individuals say that the color of the curtain in the bathroom wasn't the right color, and then suddenly they wouldn't put a contract on the house, was something that I wasn't ready for. So I knew commercial was a lot more business relative, a lot more Monday through Friday, kind of full-time position rather than a 7-day a week, 24-hour a day and weekends and so forth, even though commercial has become that also over the last 10 years, just the way that our society has gone. But at the time, it was more of a structured environment, more corporate and more, business oriented, numbers oriented.
Plus, you probably got tired of people not liking the color of the kitchen.
Yeah. So yeah, the emotional side of residential. The emotional side of residential is a big part of, and you can imagine these families are young and they're picking their first house and they're making their decisions based on their visual and so forth. And I get it. I understand it. It was just, it's different from the corporate world that we're in and the commercial world that we're in.
Right. Yeah. Right. So tell us a little bit, you've represented a lot of studios. Tell us a little bit about some of the specific nuances of representing studios as tenants, as now sellers.
Sure. So it's a very unique industry. It's a very unique product. There's very few facilities that are built for that specifically. There's a few scattered around in our market, in our South Florida market, specifically Miami-Dade County. But some of the features that they need to have, in most cases, and again, technology is changing rapidly, so some of these features are evolving significantly, with technology. But for instance, especially for studios where you're filming, like Mega TV, which is a facility we'll talk a little bit more detail, but ceiling heights is important. You have to be able to have the right angles for the lights and for the cameras to capture all the different angles. Acoustics, you need to have an area. You need to have the building be have the proper acoustics and insulation so that nothing is heard on the inside except what needs to be heard, none of the exterior sounds. Obviously, Miami being, the Miami International Airport being in the middle of Miami-Dade County, planes fly around from in every which direction. So really taking care of that acoustics is important, and that's a part of the infrastructure that you have to spend some money on. So ceiling heights, acoustics. In the facility that we have presently for sale, there's 2 buildings. It's a 70,000 square foot facility, as Fernando said, but it's composed of 4 different kind of product types. And 2 of the buildings are high ceilings. One's a 10,000 square foot studio warehouse, and the other one's a 5,000. So they're able to kind of take those buildings, create whatever stage they want to create on the inside, have the proper ceiling heights, have the acoustics. Then another item is power. You need enough power. Again, technology is advancing, so the power needed is less. But up until recently, the power that's needed for the systems and the televisions and the radios is significant. Backup systems too. When you're in the middle of a live show, you really can't have the risk of losing power. So you need redundancy. So maybe you need an FP&L feed from 2 different areas of the buildings. Fiber now is a little bit more used. We now got Cat5 and so forth. So again, technology, everything's advancing. But those are some of the more kind of unique features that your normal either office or warehouse building doesn't have.
And what about in terms of where these buildings are? Is there a specific zoning where they have to be? Or is it all conditional use? Or are there places where they can actually do this by right?
Right. So So if you're office zoning, or even if you're an industrial, I'm an IU1 zoning at 7007 Northwest 77th Avenue. It allows for what you do need is, let's say if you're going to have live events and you're going to have some visitors and guests, you need parking associated to make sure that you're meeting those demands. So parking is something that these buildings have to come with, but there's not a specific zoning. Just like medical falls under office, studios can fall under office, under industrial, and it's not a specific zoning needed. And there's many parts of Miami-Dade County where there's been pockets of these kind of buildings that have been built, but there's not, I would say, they're not concentrated 100% in one area.
Okay, and you brought up parking, which was one of my questions. Is parking demand usually higher than other office and industrial uses? I'm thinking of like casts and staff and
100%. So in our facility out in the Airport West Market, we definitely have plenty of parking. When they put on live shows, either in the evenings or on the weekends, they'll sometimes bring in a live crowd, which interacts with the presentation, with the speakers and so forth. And so you need to be able to either have the parking to accommodate them, or in some cases, you can set up a system where you can bus them in from a shared parking space and so forth. So there's ways around it, but definitely it's something that you need to pay attention when you're opening up one of these facilities.
Perfect.
I wonder about the players, because when you're marketing a property, you're always looking at who your audience is. But this feels like there's a small group of players, for this kind of product, or are you seeing more new entities joining in the demand for studios and for this type of product?
So, Miami historically, a lot of the bigger players that are here, like Telemundo and Univision, Spanish Broadcasting System, you see all our TV stations like Channel 7, CBS, and ABC and so forth, and they're scattered throughout South Florida. The state of Florida, and I think Jennifer discussed it earlier, stopped incentivizing the production and movie production group out of California. I think that's kickstarting again a little bit right now from what I hear. I'm not sure that's more of a political issue than anything else. But at a time it was growing, I'd say it's been a little more stale the last few years in terms of the specifics of the amount of new groups out of California that have come here to film and so forth. It really, especially, I'm talking about facilities that are just indoor and everything's done within a controlled environment. But some of these movies, they need to take over areas of our city. So there's got to be a lot of cooperation between the municipalities, the private groups, the industries, the users, the businesses. And so it's a big event that takes place, when you're doing out movies that entail the outside of the city.
And when you following up that logic, how important is location, and accessibility and proximity to, major centers of transportation, accessibility or closeness to the airport, things of that nature? Does that play a role in the value of the property?
Absolutely. And the value of property, any type of property, can be close to a major highway with easy on-off ramps, easy accessibility, signage visibility. If you have, the Palmetto Expressway, there may be up to 300,000 cars passing daily, to be able to let everybody know that you're there, that you're, feel your presence, and also to locate you. In a lot of these studios and so forth, there's a lot of first-time visitors. So, it's easy for somebody, if it's not easily visible with a large sign, it could take somebody a while to find exactly where you're at and so forth. So yes, location is important. Access to the right demographics is important. Accessibility to the property is important. All those things play a major factor in evaluating the property.
And in all the years that you've been, working with these groups, how many times have they asked you to be a cast member on one of their shows?
So, funny enough, I try to do my showings before they're even in the building. If you call me for a showing at 7:07, I'm going to tell you I prefer to do it at 11 in the morning, because they get really busy after 3 p.m. in the afternoon, and then we can't really access, because at that point they need their privacy and their quietness and their green rooms and their makeup rooms and DJ booths and so forth. 7007 is Northwest 77th Avenue.
That
You know,
is such a great
it's
number, by the way. That is such a great
It's a great
address. I
address.
love that address.
I love that too.
yeah, definitely very, very catchy. I mean, it's a 5.4 acre site, composed of two land parcels, two folios. On one of the folios, about 3.5 acres, sits the approximately 68 to 70,000 square foot, 100% air conditioning, building that really is composed of four different buildings. There's about 2-story, relatively new impact windows, new roof, office building, typical office with, proper floor plates and proper lighting and so forth. Then you have the two buildings I mentioned earlier, a 10,000 square foot studio warehouse and a 5,000 square foot studio warehouse. A lot of the, especially if you guys watch Mega TV, which is channel 22 locally, it's also a national TV station, all 4 or 5 of their programs are they're all staged within these buildings. So it's kind of neat to walk them during the day when there's nobody there. And then at night they're hustling and bustling and so forth. So it's kind of cool. So and then the last piece, there's 2 more pieces. Then there's a 34,000 square foot, what I call office flex showroom. Could be office, could be flex, could be a showroom. And by the way, we're marketing this, obviously a studio, could be a user, but it really could work for a lot of other industries. Anybody that needs to showcase their products,
right?
Car dealerships, boat dealerships, any heavy equipment that needs an area where they can showroom their, their product. It's just a great area. And like you said, Fernando, with the visibility and signage off the Palmetto, for a lot of these companies to be able, and there's such a there's such a lack of available opportunities in the Miami market, up and down the Palmetto or up and down some of the major highways, that it really takes somebody to understand the value of 300,000 cars passing every day, and seeing your signs and seeing the kind of operation that you are, and so forth. So
and having 5 acres anywhere in Miami.
And the last piece of it is,
that's so true.
About 75,000 square feet of the land is still developable. So it can be used for extra parking, as we were mentioning, or we can develop, depending on what kind of product, but maybe another 30,000 square foot building on that site. So it's a opportunity for somebody that needs to understand it and needs to understand the value of the existing product, but also what it could be converted to in the future.
And that's why you always, when you're marketing, you wanna throw a wide net, because you never know who is going to look at that property and see it for what it can be rather than for what it is, because the convertibility factor and all of those items that you mentioned are extremely attractive to a buyer that maybe is not looking for a studio space, but they're looking for something else that they want to create.
Yeah, and another interesting point is, land value has gone up so much in local markets here, specifically developers looking to develop, let's say, industrial, high-end industrial space, which is probably the market that has the lowest vacancy of all our different product types. And so it's interesting. A lot of these covered, are becoming also covered land plays, where this is another opportunity. The existing owner and tenant of 7007 would stay for a period of time if somebody wanted to consider a covered land play while they redesign. They can stay as a tenant and then eventually relocate, or stay in a part. The existing owner tenant doesn't need the 70,000 square feet. Technology has advanced where we can work with less square footage in terms of redesigning our space, looking into the future. So it could be a covered land play, and again, land values are almost catching up to what the value of a building is, right? So
correct.
That's an interesting. It's also happening in residential. How many wealthy individuals are buying beautiful houses on the coastline for $5, $10, $20 million or more, and then knocking them down?
Right.
Yeah, we're seeing prices throughout Florida. I don't care what asset class that I never thought we'd see. I mean, you look at some of the residential stuff, and I'm like those numbers weren't anywhere near that 5 years ago. 5 years ago, that wasn't that long ago.
No.
So let me stick a little bit with valuation, because you've talked a little bit about it, and I think it's really unique. So how do you value a property like this when you're getting ready to sell it? I mean, do you separate the FF&E? Do you look at just the land value and buildability? Do you, how do you, because it is so specific, but to your point, it could be a covered land play. It could be something else with a lot of visibility. How did you go about valuing it?
Sure. Great question. And the answer is definitely all and everything you just said. So,
Okay.
it because you have so many different components, you have the land value, you have the land that you can still develop where no building exists now, only some additional parking that we use in the meantime. You have an existing facility that has a lot of F&E, like you mentioned, which has, backup systems, power, cameras, stages, fiber optics, and so forth. We've really had to look at it from every different angle. Obviously, the entity that can value the existing facility and the existing FME the most is the entity or the group that will pay the most for it. So that's our targeted market right now. But we also understand that there's definitely buyers that would buy this almost as a cover land play and want to develop something completely different than what sits there now. There's still a lot of FAR left. And you also have groups that maybe you'll say they can use the existing building, but then only develop the land and so forth. So the valuations the range is significant. And it really depends on the particular user, what his real need is and what, how he can best value and implement the existing facility to kind of fit into what he's trying to do or that group is trying to do and so forth. So it is a hard, I guarantee if we ask 3 appraisals to appraise it, we'll probably get a fairly big range and we'll get 3 different answers. And I don't think any of them are wrong. It just depends where they put a little more weight on. If we feel the weight is a little more, businesses that may be like a boat dealership that may say, hey, I need to be in Miami-Dade County. I need to have 300,000 cars see my sign every day. What are my options? Not many, right? And I want to own, right? And I want to own. I know the future of Miami is positive. Then, in that 5 acre, in that 3 to 10 acre range, there's maybe 2 opportunities. There's just not a lot of opportunities right now. So, that's our target market, and those are the groups that we're talking to right now, and seeing, how we can come to an agreement on pricing and so forth.
I think you brought up a really good point and something that Fernando's going through now. And I think we're going to have to make this another podcast episode, but is how you appraise these special, unique properties where it's not like housing or office where everything's kind of bolted together and more or less the same. They're so unique that chances are there might be other studios in the area, but not exactly like this one. So thank you for bringing that up. That was a really good point.
Yeah, it makes it a challenging project, but it also makes it exciting for us because, we have to be on our toes for this one, and we have to understand the different ways to look at it. And we're talking to everybody. We're talking to all the brokers. We're talking to all their clients, and the right buyer will come our way, and we need to listen to them too, right? It can't be a one-sided conversation because it's, as we've been saying, this property has a lot of moving parts and a lot of upside to it.
Absolutely.
So we just have to.
Have people been approaching you with the live local?
I was just going to mention. So we all know live local is kind of a newer trend in our market after the state, kind of announced the state laws and so forth. There has been a couple groups that have looked at us. We are in a very industrial area where this building is its present location, and it hasn't gone much farther in some initial conversations. It doesn't mean that they won't, resurrect here in the near future. But probably from a pure housing, it's an area that you have housing too much in the area, where you can tie it into some other, market amenities and so forth. Mm-hmm. So yes, we've had a couple approach us. It's kind of just been initial conversations.
Because I think that's interesting. You say that about it being an industrial area. I remember when I moved here 30 something years ago, Doral was almost all industrial with tiny little pockets close to the turnpike, maybe that had some residential. And now look at it today. It's one of the fastest growing cities in Miami, and there's not as much industrial. So
absolutely.
In addition to the live local, we also fall in an opportunity zone, which that's a whole other podcast you can have. We have the state of Florida or the federal opportunity zone and so forth. Yeah. So that whole area from 74th Street down all the way to 36th Street and farther down in some cases. Yes, 10, 20 years from now, Jennifer, what is that going to look like? I mean, who knows? It's we have a lack of land in Miami-Dade County, and residential is our biggest need. We just have a lack of housing, especially affordable and workforce housing and middle income housing. So who knows what areas will catch on.
So, Tony, if I may shift gears a little bit, I want to talk a bit about your approach and the approach of Fairchild Partners, because I've always had such a positive interaction with everybody there. Jose, Sebastian, Maria, Jonathan Lay, yourself. Tell us a little bit about that culture. And the reason why I'm asking this question is because, we have a lot of young people that want to enter the commercial real estate sector. And so I'm wondering if you have thoughts as to how people can transition into commercial and how they can grow, their business from that angle.
Sure. Excellent. Appreciate those nice comments about Fairchild. We've really built a culture here that's about, always staying positive, always, our clients are our friends are our clients, our brokers are our friends, so on and so forth. And that's really the mentality that we all have here. And it's worked well. I mean, Jose Ucadella and Maria opened up Fairchild in 2005. So we're going to have a 20-year anniversary coming up pretty soon here next year.
Nice.
Right? 20 years.
Yeah.
So, and I joined them in 2006. So I've, been a part of it since the very beginning. I mean, I'd say to the young generation, and we obviously spend a lot of time talking to individuals, helping them, guiding them. They mentor us, they shadow us, and so forth. But in commercial, as I find it to be the biggest difference from the residential, there's two words, and they're common words, but patience and resilience. They have to have patience and they have to have resilience. You got to start with that. Now, the opportunities are tremendous. We have a need for young individuals to step into commercial real estate. There is a void there between kind of an older generation and a younger generation. But it takes somebody that understands what they're getting into, that understands that the process takes time and you need to follow it. And then if you do as you should do to get to the next level, the upside is significant, and there really is no ceiling, right, on what you can accomplish, as a commercial broker. So, the most important aspects, I think, are, find the right group and the right mentors to help you through it. Don't try to do it on your own. I think it's especially as a young college graduate, you need to really hear from individuals that have been doing it for a long time. There's a lot of different aspects of commercial real estate, right? And there's no right and there's no wrong. I mean, from appraising to consulting to, land brokers and office brokers and warehouse brokers and leasing, selling. There's a lot of different areas you can get into, but, find the right group, find what you like, try to find a mentor that'll spend time with you. And then you got to get to some hard work, right? Back to that resilience. Yeah. But there's opportunities. There's definitely opportunities.
I love what you're saying about, do your research, but find a mentor, right? So you came from kind of a big corporate commercial company and you went into a small boutique commercial company. Can you highlight a little bit of the differences? I know none's better or worse. They're just different. But if you can just go through some of the difference and...
Right. No doubt. I did have the opportunity to work for a couple of the largest real estate groups in the world, really. I mean, Tishman Speyer Properties out of New York is one of the largest developers around the world. And then I was at CBRE for 8-9 years before I was at Fairchild. And look, the business of real estate is the same. You have to, first of all, understand your market, learn your market, whether that's product oriented, industry oriented, location oriented, whatever that is. Try to understand what your goals are. And once you get a feel for that and you learn your market, it's really about interacting with people and finding those individuals that could be referral sources for you, right? Whether it's attorneys, accountants, bankers, consultants. I have really benefited. I'm very thankful for a lot of individuals I've met in my career that have become lead generators for me, and a lot of it start with just befriending them. I've been always very involved in local organizations, from the Chamber of Commerce's to the local economic groups like the Beacon Council. At different times on and off my career, I've been involved. Obviously, I'm a CCIM and been very involved in that, and I'm a CCIM designate since 1998. So I'd say the institutional and corporate world is a little more structured. Maybe they have a little bit more backbone in terms of resources that you have access to. But then they're also a lot more institutionalized in that they want things done a certain way. They want you on certain teams. They want you to, they want to lead you a little bit more, as opposed to the smaller boutique firm. You can be a little bit more creative in your decision making and where you end up with your opportunities and so forth, right? Not a wrong, not a right. It's just, the bigger corporations, it's in their best interest to, have good teams in all the different asset classes and all the different products in all the different geographic locations. So if they can get you headed in one direction, it's beneficial to them. And it could be beneficial to you too, very much so. On the boutique entrepreneurial groups, then, maybe you get a little more freedom to be a little more of a generalist sometimes, right? If I can use that word.
Fernando and I have spoken before about how each of us approaches getting to know your market, but you brought that up, and I love that because I think that's so important for somebody just getting into commercial real estate. How would you recommend somebody who has no real estate background get to know, well, maybe first pick a market, and two, then how do they really do a deep dive to get to know a market?
It really, again, I have to go back to what I said earlier. It really, I think they need to have a lot of conversations with a lot of different individuals in a lot of different offices. A couple of large firms like, the Cushman & Wakefield's, the CBREs, and the Colliers, and a few of the smaller firms, and then get a sense of what you're being told, and then see what fits your personality. If you're a guy that doesn't like, listen, we're in a remote world right now. We're in a work from home world. If you're an individual that's used to that, that's the way you kind of see your future, you got to pick a much more local market. Let's say an up and coming market in America right now is kind of the whole South Dade market. Pick the South Dade market, pick industrial, pick land, and become an expert in that area, right? As opposed to maybe if you're more inclined to being on the road all the time, putting, 100 miles on your car every day, and you want to travel all over South Florida on a daily basis, that can be done too, right? And then you can pick other areas of commercial real estate and so forth. It just depends, but you have to talk to individuals that are experienced, listen to what they have to say, and understand the pros and cons of the different opportunities. And then when you get in it and you go forward, maybe you switch, right? I mean, there's nothing wrong with it. I was much more of an office specialist for many, many years in my career, and I was known for that. I'd say the last 10 or 12 years, I've become a little more of a generalist. I've really enjoyed it. It's been driven more so by the clients that have created, that have developed over the last 25 years that are take me in different directions, like Spanish broadcasting in 7007 and so forth. Yeah. And that's okay too, right? At the end of the day, our license lets us do a lot of different things, right? Our real estate license.
I love that you brought that up, because we mention that all the time, that you usually start out as a specialist, but then it's all about the client and the client's needs. So eventually with a good client base, you end up expanding. Let me ask about,
because you take care of the client and not the product, right?
What happens to a specialist, which is fine, if you really, and by the way, many specialists do very, very well.
Exactly.
They just have to grow that market. Let's say you only do Class A office, million square foot or 500,000 square foot buildings or bigger. And, you may have to cover Miami, Fort Lauderdale, and Palm Beach with your team. For instance, like a Brian Gale does with Cushman & Wakefield and his team, which is an office-only great office team, probably one of the lead teams in our market. He's covering buildings all the way to Palm Beach and so forth, right? In order to be able to have enough product for his entire team to all, be supported under that same umbrella. You have to grow that market, as opposed to generalists can kind of stay in one, it's just different ways to view it.
Is there anything that you would look at? Let's say somebody picks South Dade warehouses and they're just starting and they're with a boutique firm. They've had conversations. That's what they want to do. How or where would they start looking to get detailed information on that specific asset class in that specific market? Is it driving?
So when I started, which, back in the late 80s, early 90s, we didn't have computers and we didn't have all the information that's at our fingertips now. And my first year or two in my career was market research. I needed to drive every building, go in the lobby, see who the tenants were, take pictures, see the parking, try to guess if a law firm had 1 floor or 2 floors. And I had to create these vanilla files, and I had a whole room full of them, and I had to report once a week to my senior brokers. And I still believe in that. I still believe you have to feel and touch your product and drive your markets. But the younger generation has the benefit that you can spend time, at your desk on a computer with all the different ways and we have access to information, from Miami Realtors to RPM to CoStar to Crexi, to MLS, so many ways that we can access information. And you can learn the basics of, there's so much public information, but from ownership to mortgages to land sizes to buildings when they were built and so forth. But that cannot be a complete replacement for getting in your car and going and walking it, right? Because there's nothing like walking a property. There's just, it's just like an appraisal. When I see an appraisal, if I ask an appraisal, did you go to the property? And I've had answers more in the residential than the commercial, right? But, when they say no, I always shake my head, because how can you appraise a property that you don't know what the neighbor looks like? You don't know, we can all Google walk, but it's
not
just
the
not
same.
the same.
You don't get the feel. We always talk about the importance of boots on the ground. It's super easy to get a little bit lazy because, to your point, data's everywhere. But you can have one thing and you don't, it might paint a picture in your head when you're Googling everything. But when you get boots on the ground, you get a feel for the property in the area. Yeah. Thank you so much for that. I think anybody who's thinking of getting in commercial is going to get just a ton of use out of that. And I do want to thank you and everybody at Fairchild for having been so generous with your time over decades of association work and volunteering in different positions. Every single one of the individuals that Fernando mentioned has been involved with the associations or SIOR or CCIM and giving back to their profession. So I want to thank you very much for that, Tony.
No, I think it's clear that both from a business perspective and from a collaborative perspective, that the approach is always about relationships and deepening relationships and getting to a point where you're working by referral, and it just makes the experience that much better when you're speaking to a fellow professional that is trying to collaborate and is trying to make things go. I wanted to ask you, we are in a very special market. I think for the last 3 years, every news nationally that has been shared about commercial real estate, whether it's in the office market or industrial, multifamily, etc., we've always had to put a caveat about Miami, saying that Miami is insulated from a lot of the things that are happening nationwide. We are, I think we're in a market that is seeing some shifts, and so I'm wondering, how are you seeing the market? What is your prognosis for the market in the next 2-3 years?
Crystal ball time.
Yep. Yeah. Yep. Like Mike Silver, get out your little wizard hat.
That's right.
Become a magician. Listen, I go, pre-COVID, which is really, the line in the sand being changed for South Florida. Right. New York City was New York City and Dubai was Dubai, right? And those two cities, those two names, had the brand name, had the business, had the tourism, had the wealth, the individual and wealthy individuals that want their first, second, or third houses in the areas. They were there, the Hamptons or Dubai and so forth. Since COVID, Miami, which has always had a significant brand name internationally, has just maybe surpass both those names. For me to sit here and say that Miami is a bigger brand name than Dubai or New York City, the Big Apple, is unheard of, right? But I really believe it now. So
yeah,
because of that, the snowball is going down the hill, and it's just growing and growing and growing. I don't see anything stopping the momentum of Miami and South Florida in terms of growth, population growth, business growth,
yeah,
and relocation of individuals that have kind of, found our little paradise here, and Florida in general too. But being from Miami,
right.
I think Miami's the lead in terms of branding. So now that said, we had a tremendous rise in appreciation in prices for commercial real estate in pretty much every category up and through last year. I think last year and
including
last
leasing
year,
rates,
leasing values, prices, valuations, vacancies dropping just about in every product type. Office maybe is the only one that you can second guess a little bit, even though pockets of our city like Brickell Avenue, Coconut Grove, Wynwood, and then the Palm Beach, Palm Beach area, they doubled in values. The leasing prices doubled in values, and the amount of these, entities coming from Chicago, New York, Los Angeles, and so forth is, hundreds of thousands of square feet, millions of square feet, right?
Yeah.
So, but all the other industrial, retail, self-storage, land price, all hit record highs. Last year, there was definitely a slowdown, right? But our slowdown is nothing like what maybe is happening around a lot of the other states around the country. So South Florida, again, has been insulated or immune to some of that slowdown that we're seeing in other parts of the country. I think this year, 2004, has started with a lot of energy and a lot of activity and a lot of excitement. There could be a lot of closings this year. I think it's ramping up just in our in our small circle here at Fairchild Partners. We're seeing the activity. We have properties under contract. We have leases out for signature. Some already happened, but there's a lot more to come. I think the momentum for 2024 is significant. So how long can it last? I don't know. There's if you look at world issues, if you look at our, it is an election year, and there's two opposite polar candidates that are competing to be the next president of the United States. You couldn't have more opposites than I've ever, seen or heard of. There's wars there's geopolitical issues right now with the wars. Any little wrinkle in any of those could have major impacts on the economy. Now, as slow as the United States, got, the rest of the world is slower, right? So we're always the lead because Europe has had a slowdown, China's had a slowdown, and so forth. So we continue to we're still a safe haven, for the wealthy to put their investments in and put their money in. Yeah. Now saying that, I still look at the opportunities. A lot of people don't realize, but Miami is the city farthest west of South America, right? So if you look at the United States and you look at Miami, and then South America is to the east of us, we're the connecting point to another 500 million people in South America. And we're seeing it. Everything flows through Miami, so every time there's an election in South America, change in government, we're seeing the effects of businesses and dollars coming through Miami and so forth. If we ever get that act together and really combine all that, it could be a powerhouse for the next couple of decades.
Yeah.
So to your point, I think the slowdown obviously has been because of the interest rates, right? Because the demand and the interest is still there. So at least we're seeing it. It sounds like you're seeing it just because of what you're seeing in terms of contracts and lease ups in 2024, and we're only just ending the first quarter, right? So I think that demand, to your point, it's just kind of waiting to see where interest rate settles, getting a little bit more realistic between the buy and the sell ask. I think people were very cautious last year, but if that's the case, as soon as interest rates do come down even a little bit, and I think that's what the government or the Fed's afraid of, right? Is that because there still is a ton of pent-up demand, and overall the economy is still blaring away, doing extremely well. I mean, our our inflation rate in Miami is higher than the nation, and our unemployment rate is lower than the nation. So that tells me there's still the demand there, but those are the issues that offset people wanting to buy because they keep the interest high.
No doubt. I mean, I'll challenge you a little bit on the interest rates. They got extremely low, and they probably shouldn't have been that low for a period of time. But historically, they're not that high right now either. But they did double in a short period of time, right? And I think that's what you're referring to. So, you had a doubling in interest rates in a 6-month period. It froze everybody. But historically, if we look at it, you know, the rates are now, if you look back 50 years, they're probably favorable, right? I mean, my first house was at 9%.
Mine was 18 wow. In California. Yeah. So no, I agree with you 100%. I don't think the interest rates are high historically. It's just, it was a big jump in a short period of time, and people were basically ready, not ready, but they were used to free money, basically free money. And then the numbers, you can make the numbers work when depreciation is double digits, and and the interest rates are around 3 to 4%, right?
But don't you guys find that, because people always tell me when there's bad news, is that going to negatively impact your business? And what I always tell people is what happened last year was, to your point, the speed of the change was what stop people on their tracks. But I think that what the markets always respond to is certainty, right? So whether the rates are higher than they were, once they understand, okay, this is the paradigm under which we are going to function,
they're going to be here.
They're ready.
Right,
they're ready to engage, right? What I think what stops markets is the level of uncertainty. When the change is too fast, when they don't really know whether everything is going to fall. But once the market understands, good or bad, this is the way things are, and there are certain aspects that I can gravitate to say these are my certainties, these are the facts that I'm starting with, then they're able to act. And that's why I think that's why, regardless of the rate, we're seeing such activity.
I agree with you 100%. It's definitely, you have to get used to the new environment. So every market's going to have activities, a little more, a little less, but it's what people don't like and business don't like is the unexpected, right? If you're making a decision, but you really don't know what the next 6 months hold, and an election year causes that, right? Because again, it's two polar opposite individuals or political sides that are, trying for the same goal. So, when you have that creates cautiousness and slowdown. But when you can look out a little bit of time and okay, this is the world I'm in, then people will make decisions.
Well, Tony said he agreed with me, so I think that's a perfect time to end this. But Tony, I just out of curiosity, just because is this the most unique? What is the most unique property that you've represented?
So this one's definitely up there. The use, the name, it's Spanish media. But I gotta say that I had a very fun time in my career from 2008 to 2011, which was a little bit of a slowdown market, if you know those years, where I was under Fairchild umbrella. I was the leasing agent at probably one of the most unique buildings in downtown Miami, and we also had the chance to rename it, and we renamed it Miami Tower. It was SunTrust at one point. It had 3 or 4 different names before. So that building, architect Pi was the initial designer. It's that wedding cake design where it's a little wire in the bottom and then shrinks up. You talk about learning your product. That one took me like months because every floor is different, every view is different. And then we got to rebrand that and rename it. So, that was a very fun project too, but different. This one definitely is unique, but we're having a real good time with it. We're interacting with so many quality people and brokers around the country, really, right? Which is amazing. And before we leave, I also want to congratulate you guys. Number one on your partnership that you created, I guess a couple of years ago now, and also all the great things you're doing in the commercial world. And then this podcast really is much needed, and I think you're bringing on some great guests. And look, quality information is important. There's a lot of non-quality information out there that's in front of us. And I know you guys do a good job of trying to bring out the issues in our market and the truth about them and so forth. So I commend you for that.
Thank you, buddy. Thank you so much. We always end the podcast with a little special stat that we come across. So, Jennifer, you have your stat?
Sure. So mine is regarding EUE Screen Gems, since we're talking about studios. In 2015, they launched their Miami studios in partnership with Viacom, and they have two 88,000 square foot state-of-the-art stages. And it was a public-private partnership, which is why I think that should be one of our topics for an episode. And it was built by the Miami Omni Community Redevelopment Agency, another group we need to get on here. So
my stat is about the TV production business in the U.S. There's almost 11,000 of those businesses as of 2023. They have grown by almost 5% over the last 5 years. Florida is the third highest state in the U.S. behind California and New York, respectively, with number of TV production businesses. So
awesome.
There you go.
Keep those jobs coming.
Yeah.
Excellent.
Well, listen, Tony.
Go Miami. Go Miami.
Go Miami. Tony, I do want to say you've always been an ally and a friend, and I consider you a brother, and I so appreciate your time here. I did want to say that if there was ever a Tony Puente show, maybe I need to speak to Spanish Broadcasting. I would be a fan. I would watch it every day.
I'd want to be live in the audience.
Exactly.
I appreciate that. And I promise if we do that, you'll be my first call.
I love it. Thank you, brother.
Thanks so much.
Right.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you so much. Enjoy your day.
Of course.
Too.
Thank you, everybody, for joining us. We look forward to the next one, and I hope you enjoyed this wonderful experience. Bye.